Tech Cocktail Sessions, educational and inspirational talks from experienced startup founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders.
Good evening. Thanks for those of you that are hanging around. If anyone needs to break their fast, please feel free to stand up and go. I don't understand, but we do have an associate that works with us that just broke it, so if you need to do that, please go ahead. So Frank is right. I was a lawyer, and I actually became a retailer. Just some conversation that I had when I asked my brother for a discount. He wouldn't give it to me, so I went to work for Best Buy and really came up with some really cool concepts over a couple days that I was just working there. And I had just a casual conversation with the COO who gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. He said, why don't you quit the practice of law, and I'm going to pay you $9 an hour to come work for me as a salesperson. I said, you know what? That sounds like the best idea ever. So I quit and decided to become a retailer. A few months later, I was a manager. And really what happened was I quickly realized that I had a different way of managing. And it really was about digging into these stacks and stacks of reports and really figuring out what my customers that didn't buy, what they really wanted and at what price. And then I would connect back with them personally. And I was driving all these sales. Well, all the stores I was working in started to churn and become really profitable. And over time, they asked me to come and teach other managers to do this. Well, what I learned was managers were really good at asking for customers' names and what price. They didn't want to do the math. So I then went to work for another retailer to see if it worked there, and lo and behold, it did. So I said, okay, I got to try one more. So I went to work for another one, and it worked again. And so now I'm thinking, God, I have this great idea. I got to go do something. So I started looking around for someone who could take this idea and design something. And I went through my first group of designers, and they just couldn't get it. They just didn't understand. Then I met Carrie. And Carrie, my co-founder, is a former band manager. So you know he's just out there, and he's got this creative vision. And he said, let me hear what you've got. And I said, I've got this company. It's called Emerge. And he said, that's dumb. So, we got to change the name. Think of something else. So I said, hey, let's call it Salamander. And Carrie's like, that's not going to work either. How about Lemur? So we came up with Lemur because we were capturing the long tail of retail. And Carrie started designing all this really, really cool stuff. And then I started thinking, well, who's in my network that I can touch base with that can help me actually make this a reality? And I started going back through my college friends, my law school friends. No. Well, I went to the special high school in Northern Virginia, Thomas Jefferson. And there was an individual there who is Evan Burfield, who's chair of Startup DC. So I emailed him. No answer. I emailed him again. No answer. I emailed him again. No answer. The 6th email, I get a response that says, will you stop emailing me if I meet you for breakfast? I later came to find out that breakfast to him is the way to eat and just get rid of you. But I pitched him, and over 2 hours, I told him how we were coding in C#, and it was going to be unbelievable. And he said, wait, what is that? And I said, the pound symbol. He said, that's C#. The first thing you need to learn to do is understand what you're doing. And I said, okay. And I said, what's the next thing, Evan? He said, go raise some money. I said, from who? He said, your friends and your family. If you can't convince your friends and your family that this is a good idea, then quit. And this is like on a Thursday. So on Monday, I call him. I said, hey, Evan, I raised $40,000 to quit my job. What next? He's like, you did what? He said, well, I guess now you should go raise more money. And before you go raise more money, though, you need to go to this event. This is where the VCs are. This is where the entrepreneurs are. And you need to go start networking with these people. So he sent me this link to this NVTC event where Jonathan Pirelli, Jonathan Aberman, John Burke, and Tom Weithman were going to be speaking at. So for 3 days, I did what every good lawyer did. I studied, and I researched, and I looked, and I said, I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about these people. Well, I get in the elevator, and who here knows Jonathan Pirelli? Do you guys know Jonathan Pirelli? Well, he's got a very distinct look to him. And so I get off the elevator, and I see this squat little bald man. And I go, Jonathan Pirelli! And he turns around, and he looks at me, and I say, you don't know me, but I'm going to change retail. So if you give me 5 minutes of your time, I'm going to tell you how. And he said, this is scary. And I said, well, listen, you started off, and I started going through his whole history of everything he had done in entrepreneurship, from the first business he started when he was in high school, all the way, I went through the 9th O of Google to figure all this stuff out. And he was scared. But it was a good scared, because he was like, wow, this guy at least has got some energy around this, some passion, and he's going after it. So he said, you know what, Will, I'd love to stay in touch with you, so get back in touch with me. 2 days later, I emailed him. I said, Jonathan, I know you're really, really busy. So what I'm going to do is me and my co-founder are going to drive to your office, and we're going to sit outside in your lobby, and and we're going to work in your lobby, and when you have 5 minutes, you're going to talk to me. I did that. And then I called him again. I said, hey, those 5 minutes were so good. Now I'm going to come back, and I'm going to work in an empty office space in your building, and then you're going to come and spend an hour with me. And then he did. And then all of a sudden, Jonathan was a believer. Maybe not in what I was doing, but at least in the fact that if he stopped talking to me, I might stalk him forever. So he started responding quicker and quicker to my emails. And I'm telling Evan, I said, hi, I've got this VC who's really helping me, and he's starting to mentor me. What should I do next? And he said, you know what, you need to go talk to these individuals. He pointed me to Cooley. And I went over and I spoke to Catherine Ferguson, and I took her this 30-page business plan. And she said, what do you want me to do with this? And I said, I think you should read it. She goes, I won't. How about you write a one-page executive summary, and maybe I'll look at that and send me a deck. And I said, okay. Well, I sent that to her. She sent me some nice edits, and we started figuring this out. And then I said, Evan, I met with all these people, and I've got this money. What do I do next? He said, now you need to go convince an angel. And so what I decided to do was I decided to work on my pitch with every single individual that I knew. It didn't matter if you were a cousin who was 3 years old, or you were my grandfather who was 95 and only speaks Spanish. You were going to hear the pitch, and you were going to hear it in English, and I was going to perfect it. And I kept doing that. And then one day, one of my cousins says, I have no money to give you, but this guy comes into my restaurant, and he's rich. He's like really rich. And when I say rich, I mean rich, Will. Do you want to talk to him? I said, I love rich people, yes. And so he connected me with him. And we sit down, and I was a little bit more excited than I am right now. And I sat there, and I told him my story. I told him what we did, and I told him my product, and I told him my vision. And he goes, you know what? I used to work in retail, and I used to hate all that old stuff, and I used to hate not being able to get in touch with my customers. How much money do you want? I didn't even know how much money I wanted. I said, I don't know, 100,000. He goes, let's go to the bank. And we went to the bank. I drove him there. I said, let's go. And he wrote me a check. And I call Evan up. I go, Evan, I just had a meeting. Someone wrote me a check for $100,000. What do I do next? He goes, let's start building something. And so I said, okay, well, what do we do now? He said, well, now we need to find technical talent. And I was lucky, right? So I was lucky. I had Evan, so he knew technical talent. We started building that. But what we needed to build was not just great technical talent, but technical talent that truly believed in what we could do. And what we could do if they were bought into my vision, along with their skill set, along with Carrie's vision, along with everyone else who was coming around us. And so we started building this product. And we really didn't have anything, but we had a question earlier about when do you start calling enterprise? Well, I actually picked up the phone and called the CEO of Best Buy. And I said, hey, you changed my life 8 years ago. I'm about to change yours. I just need 5 minutes of your time. Talk to me. 24 hours later, he emailed me. He said, when are you available to talk? And I was like, oh my gosh, someone's actually listening. This is amazing. And so now I'm actually really scared. I'm like, what are we going to do, right? So we better start moving. So now what I decided to do was like, I'm ready to talk, and but I know you're really busy, so let's talk in a few weeks. And he said, yeah, that sounds great. In the meantime, what I did is I went back out and I reached back to my former boss, who is Jeff Katz, who now works for me, and my former, I will say protege, but he was more Jeff's than mine, Asad Ali, who are now like these top-notch managers at Best Buy. And I said, hey, I've got something, I want to show it to you. And I showed it to them, and I said, what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think? And Jeff said, well, I'm quitting my job tomorrow to come work for you. I said, I can't pay you. He goes, that's cool. This is going to be big. We'll figure it out later. I said, Asad, what do you think? He said, I'm going to quit my job and come work for you. And I said, wow, this is great. I mean, if I can run a business without having to pay people, this is amazing. I'm going to be profitable in 3 hours. So we started using Jeff and Asad and their contacts and really building what we were building around kind of that end user experience. So someone already talked about it earlier, right? Like, what is that person who's going to use it, that user story? You know, we didn't have great names. What we had was manager who needs to, pay his bills. Manager who's working 120 hours. How do we make it down to 80 hours? And we're trying to figure out how to build all this. And then we started seeing what else was out in the marketplace. And I started using every contact I could to connect me to every other retailer, because I knew electronics, but I needed to know everything else. And I wanted to know whether those pain points existed, and they did. And people started sharing with us because we had a vision, and we said, hey, we know what's going on in your space. And so, for those of you that know me, you know that I sleep about 4 hours a night.
And the reason I do this is because there's so little that I know and so much more that I need to know about my space. So I stay up and read everything I can about retail because I never know when I'm going to have the opportunity to sit next to that CMO, CIO, CEO who's going to ask me that question that I'm going to answer. And they're going to say, that guy gets it. And I've been lucky enough that people have said that at a lower level and have started to push me up and connect us. And so where we are now is we've taken what our users are going to be, what they're saying back to us, what the people that initially messed around with the platform and we're looking at, and we've really kind of cultivated the ultimate experience. Because if you really can listen to your users and you can connect that to your vision, you can change the world. That's how we got to product. Thank you.